primary ignition.
Hey there, friends, fans, and collectors. Welcome to another episode of Binary Sunset Review. I am Mike, and today we're taking a look at some of the relics of the Clone Wars. More specifically, the Clone Commander from Revenge of the Sith. Now, this is the red version, which I finally found in box, so we're going to take a deep dive into this figure. Let's get going. Before I begin, I want to remind everyone to hit the subscribe button below. It really helps support the channel, and it lets you stay on the forefront of the best Star Wars news and reviews as soon as I make them. Here we have the front of the box for the Revenge of the Sith Clone Commander. Now, pardon the glare, but part of the fun of the packaging for the Revenge of the Sith figures was this Darth Vader in the background and then bubble in the front, and the bubble catches all the lights that are around here. But going over the packaging, we have a nice image of the figure itself with the number. He is number 33 in this line, but we have him with his rangefinder down in the red coloring, which is pretty neat to see. We have a very nice view of the figure himself, as well as some of the weapons he comes with. This line of figures also came with different battle gear that was seen in the Clone Wars, or not seen in the Clone Wars, or theorized. But they came with a bunch of accessories, which is really, really great. A nice nod to back in the days what Hasbro used to be and how much we used to get with these Star Wars figures. We have the Revenge of the Sith logo in the bottom. We have the Clone Commander title in the bottom left. We have the legalese in the very, very corner there, as small as possible, as it should be. Now, flipping the box around, we see in the rear we also have a ton of flavor text and stuff, and very minimal legalese in the bottom. Of course, we have the Hasbro logo in the bottom corner. We have some of the website stuff through starwars.hasbro.com. That's how websites were earlier on, with an image of the Clone Wars micro series, which was the first animated Clone Wars Yoda right there. Pretty cool to see. We have the Clone Commander himself armed with some of the battle gear, again advertised the battle gear, as well as the other figures down the line. All of them being from the Revenge of the Sith or Clone Wars figures. Very, very neat, very cool. But we get another image of his the side image up at the top with his number, the Clone Commander 33, and the flavor text. And the flavor text is my favorite part, so let's read that. Clone Commander. An elite officer in the Clone Army, the Clone Commander leads a squad of clone troopers into battle against the Separatist forces. He wears special armor similar to that worn by ARC troopers. This is the exact same mold of the figure, except painted differently 3 different times and given 2 different names. So the Clone Commander, as we see here, as we're just doing a review of, comes in a different color, which is green also. So this is a green Clone Commander. It's the exact same figure, comes with the exact same stuff from the exact same line. I believe he's actually 33. I don't have the original packaging on hand, or else I would go into that. But comment below if you can remember what number he is on the Revenge of the Sith line. This same model is also shared with the different paint scheme by the Commander Bly model, and that's of the Star Corps. Commander Bly has some very unique paint scheme differences where his thighs are yellow and his armor is also yellow, but the Clone Commanders really do share the exact same model with an altered paint scheme. There's a way to do this right and a way to do this where it can piss off collectors. This is a way to do it right. Who doesn't need more troopers? And this is a great example of back in the day when Hasbro really excelled at making army building devices and army building figures that real collectors really would pride themselves in building up a bulk of. And I hope that Hasbro gives us more of these as we expand more into the Bad Batch series and potentially other timelines expanding upon more clones. First impressions of the Clone Commander out of the box are just how nice it was to have just a variety of different amazing clones, and especially clones that, you know, actually led other troopers into battle, that had different backstories, and that supported other greater legends from Star Wars. It's also nice that this is back when Hasbro supplied the figures with, you know, not just the accessories that we're seeing with them on screen, but some other fun accessories. I'll do a deeper dive into that when I actually go over the accessories that he came with, but just some of them were designed for playability and display, which is really cool. Now, these figures were part of the Revenge of the Sith line that led up to the Revenge of the Sith movie. They were debuted in 2005, and they were designed to show the depth of different clones and to intro some of the things we'd be seeing in the new film. This Revenge of the Sith line debuted in 2005, which would make this figure 15 years old. It's pretty cool, and it's pretty neat to see these figures still collector's items and still as exciting things to see on shelves as they were back in the day. The painting and detailing of this figure is what makes it particularly special. Now, the Revenge of the Sith line, since it was plugging a Clone Wars or the end of a Clone Wars movie, had a completely ton of different variants of Clone Wars figures. Now, these have some of the most unique paint schemes that have ever been seen through Hasbro, and they're still to this day some amazingly coveted figures. I'm going to be doing a deeper dive of some of these uniquely painted figures, as well as doing a top 10 of some of the best Clone Wars figures that I have. This is a great example of how you can change a paint scheme just a little bit and really add a credible depth to a figure. This was replicated in later years also through the 30th anniversary collection. We saw a bunch of different variations of Clone Commanders, but it really all started with the Revenge of the Sith line back in 2005. Now, the really cool part about these figures back in the day is that one way you could tell their different color was from the feet on up. Now, their red markings do happen on their feet, and as you can see with his green brother over there, the painting goes right onto the green feet there too. Moving on up, he's got red markings on his knee pads. He also has red markings on his ammo. He also has red markings on his ammo belt, and the ARC Trooper trained comma around him. A unique design also is that it comes with a second power cell. So we look on the back here now. We know that these power cells kind of help with the armor and help disrupt energy that hits it. But uniquely, I didn't know that the people with the commas on, they have double the capacity to defend their armor for. So it's actually pretty cool. Now, moving on up, he has the paint on his chest that lines all the way up to his helmet paint. Now he has this stripe that starts from his chest and goes all the way up. And that stripe also goes down his arms. So he's got red in his arms, red in his chest, and the pauldron on his shoulder, which connects to more ammo things, is also red. Now these denote whichever squad or whichever legion he leads, and it's a really cool, unique paint change. Alright, we're going to talk some articulation for our Clone Commander. Now, whereas the Revenge of the Sith line was known for its deep variations in paint schemes and Clone Trooper designs, it was not very well known for its articulation. Now, this was improved once we get to the 30th anniversary figures and the actual release of the Revenge of the Sith. But when we first saw these Clone Troopers, they didn't have that much. Now, they do have much better than the 5-point articulation that Hasbro has been trying to sell us these days with some of their garbage Saga Legends figures, but it still wasn't as good as we got with some of the vintage collection. Although, as you can see right here, one of the things that some of the vintage collection figures, some of the later figures struggle with in terms of articulation of the arms and getting them to T, he doesn't struggle for a second, even on his pauldron arm, and that is quite impressive. That is done by, as I've said before, they have a different joint in their arm, and we can see it right here. This joint is made into the armor. I'll do a close-up here. Now, this joint is made into the armor, so it allows for much more articulation, but it does take a little bit of the realism out of it because we have a nice square rotating hole in the peg. Now, this can be blocked up by certain articulation points and certain designs, but it's up to you if you think that it's worth it. I actually really do enjoy the articulation that we do get in the bonus. Now, his arms do turn all the way over, so not only do they tee up like that, but they also twist. He has elbow joints, which are beautiful to see. And one thing that is missing in these figures, that is only in the vintage collection, is wrist articulation, and the Black Series, of course. But for 375 figures, there is no wrist articulation in these. This was before that was a thing. We also have no hip joints, no Shakira hips, which is a shame. And we have legs that can be molded up, but they are stiff. And since this is an old figure, I don't want to force them too much. I wouldn't advise anybody to force it super too much. But it is definitely enough where you can get them down in the knee, get them articulated well. And both of the legs do that with full articulation. Now, interestingly, because he doesn't have wrist joints, He does have ankle joints, so he can point his toes down. He can, hang his toes and look like he's hanging off the edge of something, which I think is pretty neat. And even with this big knee armor here, he doesn't have that much articulation restriction in the knee joints. So again, not famed for its amazing articulation, but also much more depth than we're seeing in some of the 5-core articulated figures. Now, I would love to see these figures redone with some Vintage Collection articulation updates. Now here we have a look at the accessories that come with the red ARC Trooper. Now, the Revenge of the Sith line was advertised to come with battle gear accessories. Now, this varied from trooper to trooper, and some of them came with some accessories that added playability with some of the other vehicles that were launched and some of the other playsets that were launched. Now, this is an example of some of that. Now, I don't know if people have seen the Republic Gunship or seen my review of the Republic Gunship. I'll leave a link for that below, but definitely take a look at it because it has some rappelling hooks in the back of it. Now, we all know this is the backbone vehicle for the Grand Army of the Republic throughout the Clone Wars. It's what transported these vehicles to and from their battles and picked them up from their battles. And the vehicle actually had some playability functions that allowed these figures to simulate kind of rappelling down the back of them, kind of like Black Hawk Down style, which I always thought was really cool. These claws, it doesn't come with some of the accessories that you would need to have this with, but some of the figures do. Now, the claws that are on the back of them are designed to hook onto these handles, which the figure easily holds on to. And we also have our own set of claws that we can kind of simulate rappelling down in other situations or on other vehicles. Really cool to see this. I don't believe I have my old set from my green Clone Commander. So I'll be showing this off in a different video later, but nice variation to accessories, and really cool that they're giving us a depth of things that wasn't exactly seen on screen, but adds to some of the posability and playability functions of the figures and the vehicles as they interact with each other. Now, the DC-15A that we get here is a different mold than we're used to, a different mold that I actually prefer. I like this weapon. This is one of my favorite weapons in all the Star Wars universe, but the molds for the weapon vary based on the different figures that you get out there. Now, this one's a bit chunky. It's fatter in the wrong places where it should be. It does fit in his hand, but it doesn't really look as ratioed size as it should when you have a bunch of the figures lined up together. Another interesting change to the accessories that was recently done and is mainly changed because of the Clone Wars animated series, but the pistols that used to be on the hips of these Clone Commanders and ARC Troopers changed entirely from what they originally were. As you can see, it resembles the design of the Imperial Scout Trooper blaster, but it's different in a lot of ways. Now, this design of the pistol was completely thrown out when Dave Filoni's Clone Wars came around, and we used a more boxy DC-15 pistol that, it wasn't even the same pistol that we saw in Republic Commando. So it's a different pistol entirely, and this really does age stamp some of these figures as original clone figures when you see them packed with these Saga blasters and not the boxy cartoonish DC-15s that we get in some of the other figures. This figure also came with some extra ephemera, which is kind of a nice walk through history now that these figures are very hard to come by. Now, as we see, we have the Revenge of the Sith logo with the Darth Vader head, which was the logo for this whole line. And we have some other figures that are very synonymous to the series and very specifically Revenge of the Sith itself. We have some great figures here: Mace Windu, General Grievous, a quick draw clone, a BD-2 battle droid. But one of the really cool things that I wish Hasbro would bring back as like more of a norm is the vehicles, or the kind of rideable things that would not only had playability functions, but would also be in scale with a lot of the figures that they had in the line. Now, an example here is Obi-Wan Kenobi on his giant lizard there. Varactyl, that's what it was called. Obi-Wan Kenobi on his Varactyl lizard. And then we have the Clone Trooper with his Bark Speeder. Now, this Bark Speeder has a playability option where it can fly across the ground, which I think is pretty neat. And we also have Anakin Skywalker's Jedi Starfighter. We got some great vehicles with the Clone Wars, and I really wish that Hasbro would reignite this with their toys. You know, every time we see a vehicle, it's like once in a blue moon and maybe, but it would be really nice to have some quality vehicles to sit our figures in that we don't have to back and support and wait 18 months for. To sum up the pros and cons for these figures, it would have to start with the different varieties of colors and the army building capacity that they really allowed. Now, they really did put a leadership head onto some of our clone trooper squads and legions, as well as adding some depth to the Grand Army of the Republic that we all have in 375 scale. Another pro has to be just clone figures in general. You know, I love the clones. They're my favorite figures. It's my favorite timeline. And I just wish that Hasbro would give us all the clones again that we want and that we love. Whereas these figures can be found every once in a while, they're still not that common, which means that we are in need of a reprint for a lot of these clone figures. Before I begin, I want to remind everyone to hit the subscribe button below. It really helps support the channel, and it lets you stay on the forefront of the best Star Wars news and reviews as soon as I make them. Thanks for watching another episode of Binary Sunset Review. I've been Mike. Be sure to tune back in here for the best Star Wars news and reviews as soon as I make them. Whether you bring your bounties in cold or hot, have a great day out there, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.
I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe.